a problem with uploading the presentation.
So shall we share the screen for you?
I think so because I've never used Google Meet, so I'm trying to figure out how to do it.
No problem. Technical team, we need to have Anu ma'am slide goes on start the session. We need to share it for her. Ma'am, it will be done.
Sure, ma'am. Sure, ma'am. On it. Thank you
Anu
so
ma'am,
much.
it will be done. So we will share the slide for you once you say us yes. That should be around 2:55 to 2:55, 3 o'clock. After the inaugural and felicitation, we will have your address, ma'am. Just waiting for principal ma'am to join us.
Good afternoon, Dr. Daman. Good afternoon. Welcome, Anu. This is Padam Shri.
Hello, everybody. Hello.
Good afternoon, ma'am.
Good afternoon, ma'am. Professor Saluja, good afternoon.
Good afternoon, Padamchiri. Hello, how are you?
That's fine. How are you?
Good to see everybody online. But at least बिल्कुल ही बंद हो गया.
I know.
Ma'am, thank you for taking out this time. You had back-to-back DBT meeting, but you squeezed the time for us for today. Really grateful, ma'am. We start, principal? Shall we start, principal, ma'am? We have the speaker with us. We have our chief guest, our guest of honor, awaited. I've already messaged her.
Anita, we can start.
Yeah, ma'am, I'm just reminding again the guest of honor. She did join. Let me just, ma'am, give me 1 second. Ma'am, she was also in a meeting. I think she'll join after that. We can start. Students, we can start.
Okay, ma'am. Thank you so much. Good afternoon, all. In the words of Maya Angelou, a wise woman wishes to be no one's enemy. A wise woman refuses to be anyone's victim. Good afternoon to one and all. We are elated to welcome you to the international webinar series of the Women's Development Cell of Toratram College under the aegis of IQAC. The overarching theme for this webinar series, spanning over 3 days, is Women and Career in Science, Opportunities, Challenges, and the Way Ahead. I, Devanshi Vats,
and I, Bhavya Pandey,
welcome our audience and thank you all for gracing us with your presence this afternoon.
Light symbolizes brightness and prosperity. It removes the forces of darkness and gives us positivity. With this noble thought, let us start this event by lighting the lamp. I request our chief guest, our guest of honor, Principal Ma'am, Vice Principal Ma'am, respected Speaker Ma'am, Convener Ma'am, and WDC Cabinet members to kindly join us for this virtual lighting of the lamp.
शुभं कुरुत्वं कल्याणम् आरोग्यं धनसम्पदः शुभं कुरुत्वं कल्याणम् आरोग्यं धनसम्पदः
Goddess Saraswati is a symbol of knowledge, music, art, wisdom, and nature. As a tradition, let's dedicate a prayer to Ma Saraswati.
Sa sa ni sa ni ni sa ni pa pa ni pa ma ga ma pa ni sa da na sa pa ni ma pa ma ga ma pa ni sa Ma Saraswati Sharde Ma Saraswati Sharde भूल इस अज्ञान उदधि से भूल इस अज्ञान उदधि से वीणा पाणी तार दे तार दे तार दे माँ सरस्वती शारदे माँ सरस्वती शारदे सूर्य ब्रह्म शिव विष्णु गजानन जिन चरणों को सेवते हे सूर्य ब्रह्म शिव विष्णु गजानन जिन चरणों को सेवते हम शिशु हैं अज्ञानी माता इन चरणों का ध्यान दे वीणा पाणी तार दे तार दे तार दे माँ सरस्वती शारदे माँ सरस्वती शारदे मूरत हम नहीं जाने जननी पूजन वंदन ज्ञान को मूरत हम नहीं जाने जननी पूजन वंदन ज्ञान को आदि शक्ति करिश्मा हमें आदि शक्ति करिश्मा हमें पूजा के उद्गार दे वीणा पाणी तार दे तार दे तार दे माँ सरस्वती शारदे
Thank you, Mudita, Roshni, Padmakshi, Shrestha, Nishtha, and Shreya for your serenading rendition. Those were our friends from the music department. Now, I would like to request Dr. Anita Garg Mangla ma'am, convener, Women's Development Cell, Dolatram College, to kindly give the welcome address.
Good afternoon to one and all present. I, Dr. Anita Garg Mangla, Assistant Professor and Convener, Women's Development Cell, Dolatram College, takes immense pleasure in welcoming our Chief Guest, Professor Daman Saluja, Guest of Honor, Dr. Vijay Lakshmi K. Gupta, Plenary Speaker, Dr. Annu Bashambu, Principal Ma'am, Dr. Savita Roy, Vice Principal Ma'am, Dr. Sarita Nanda, all the faculty members, esteemed guests, and dear students on this 3-day international webinar series on Women and Career in Science, Opportunities, Challenges, and the Way Ahead from 6 January to 8 January 2021. The topic was being thought and dwelt upon for many days by the WDC cabinet as the topic revolves around building up of career by women. In today's era, when we talk about gender equality, working women face a lot of challenges and hurdles at every step, which is especially true for career in science with long gestation period. Margaret Thatcher once said, "If you want anything said, ask a man. If you want anything done, ask a woman." In this webinar series, we have got together best woman brain in the globe at one platform who have proven the code, and they will enlighten us with their journey from a student like you to the milestones achieved so far. I'm sure After listening to our esteemed speakers and guests for the next 3 days, it's going to excite, motivate, inspire, and leave all of you spellbound and more inquisitive to explore your career and ace and shine in future. Once again, welcome one and all. Thank you.
Thank you so much, ma'am. We would now proceed with the felicitation ceremony.
WDC-DRC takes immense pleasure in extending our gratitude and regard to our chief guest, Professor Daman Saluja ma'am, Director, Ambedkar Center for Biomedical Research. Our guest of honor, Dr. Vijay Lakshmi K. Gupta ma'am, Ex-Secretary, Defense, Government of India. Our plenary speaker for the day, Dr. Anu Bashambu ma'am. Our principal, Dr. Savita Roy ma'am. Our vice principal, Dr. Sarita Nanda ma'am. Our convener, Dr. Anita Garg Mangla ma'am. All the dignitaries, our faculty members, and students for joining us today. Kindly accept these tokens of our respect and appreciation, albeit virtually. I would now call upon Dr. Anita Garg Mangla ma'am to kindly present these virtual bouquets to our chief guest and guest of honor. Our chief guest, Professor Daman Saluja ma'am.
Thank you, Anita. Thank you so much.
My pleasure, ma'am.
Our guest of honor, Dr. Vijay Lakshmi K. Gupta ma'am. Our plenary speaker for today's session, Dr. Anu Bashambu ma'am.
Thanks, Anita.
Most welcome. Thank you for joining.
Now I call upon Kamna ma'am to kindly present the virtual bouquet to our principal, Dr. Savita Roy ma'am.
Thank you, Kamna.
Thank you, Anna.
I now call upon Dr. Kusum Lata ma'am to kindly present the virtual bouquet to our Vice Principal and IQAC Coordinator, Dr. Sarita Nanda ma'am. And last but not the least, I call upon Aditi ma'am to kindly present the virtual bouquet to our convener, Dr. Anita Garg Mangla ma'am, Assistant Professor, Biochemistry Department.
Thank you, my own WDC faculty, members, and students. Thank you so much.
Thank you all for your gracious presence. Now we would request our principal, Dr. Savita Roy ma'am, to kindly address the gathering.
Thank you. It is indeed my pleasure to welcome amongst us Professor Daman Saluja, who is a great fighter and also a scientist, and she knows the hurdles that a woman in science faces. I'm also witnessing so many scientists amongst us, budding scientists also, and also the scientist who is working somewhere, not in our country, outside, which she will also share her views and will be quite an interesting to look forward. Being in science, we also have faced a lot of problems in our lives to pursue this particular career. And today when we see, I find people in the science stream to be more logical, more problem solving oriented. And though we had faced a lot of restrictions in our lives to take on this particular career, but in the end, I find more equipped than any other person. So it is a rewarding career. As far as the satisfaction in the area goes, it is very nice working in the research labs. It is very nice to publish the papers, and it is also very satisfying if you see your publication being acknowledged and being utilized by the society. So towards that end, we women struggle a lot. And what I should say to this WDC is, all the women are basically scientists. Basically, they are very logical. Look at a simple housewife who, in India especially, who is not even properly educated, has got so many solutions to so many problems in day-to-day life. So where are we looking scientists? We have got Indian women who are born scientists. They find solutions to the problem, whether it is day-to-day household chore or bringing up of their children or finding their education or finding a better career for them. They are the advisors and they think very logically, and therefore people say after every successful man is a woman. But I must say that all these during all these years of being in the career with science, I found it to be very, very challenging to keep up to the expectations and the societal duties which were naturally we take on to ourselves. We feel that it is our responsibility to do all the household core work. Along with it, we get a double responsibility to excel at the workplace. That becomes quite challenging sometimes. So here comes the gender equality. Here comes what is there in the woman, which should be taken care of by the fellow scientist in the society. First of all, we have we are supposed to be strength-wise a little bit a weak entity, but our strength lies in being morally strong. We are mentally strong. We have got a lot of resilience. We can take on the challenges, and we can surpass all those adverse situations in a very seamless way. This is our this particular sex that you say is a fairer sex has got this advantage over men. They may be stronger by power, but they are not stronger mentally. So what we have seen in the society, those women who have excelled in their respective field, whether it is science or it is in any other career, it is sheer because of their conviction. They have taken on this challenge onto themselves, and they have maintained it. During the pandemic, you can see how all of us have not only taken care of our families and the career, we are taking care of the outside jobs also. So women in science is a very healthy picture now. And what I can equate is the era of Gargi and the Maitri, pre-Manu era, in the Vedic era, when these talented, I hope you know this, that during the older age, during the Vedic age, we used to have women in science. We used to have two kinds of learners. All the girls were allowed to have Yagopati Sanskar, and after that, all the girls were required to go to Gurukul, and all the girls were required to go for a proper training. After certain stage, they were divided into two groups. One, those girls who used to opt for the family life, and other girls who used to opt for the being scholar or being the teacher in their lives. So among those were the Gargis and the Maitri kind of, women who excelled in their age and were much above their counterpart men rishis. So, and as the time passed, we were during the Manu era, the history shows that because of our biological limitations, we were made a second great citizen. But thank God, the era of equality, liberty, and fraternity in the West, it ushered a revival in Indian scenario also. So in the scientific era, which we are now well into, women in science, they are doing very well in India also, and they have been performing very good in the Western countries. And the careers, we will see this 3-day, 3 speakers which we have got. They are going to enlighten us, and I must welcome Dr. Anu, Dr. Vijay Lakshmi Gupta, Dr. Vaishali Chaudhary, who is, I can see, amongst us now. And also my welcome is to Dr. Kar, whom I would like to listen throughout this session. So my heartiest welcome to all the speakers and my guests today in this international webinar series. Thank you.
Thank you very much, ma'am.
Now, we will proceed with the introduction of the Union. In the words of John Quincy Adams, if your actions inspire others to dream more, learn more, do more, and become more, you are a leader. With this, we would like to introduce the Union members of the Women's Development Cell, Dolathram College for the year 2020-21. I, Devanshi Vats of Philosophy Honours 3rd year as the President of the cell. Bhavya Pandey of Economics Honours 2nd year as the Vice President of the cell. Anshruta Thakur of Economics Honours 1st year as the Secretary of the cell. And lastly, Ishita Dey of Political Science Honours 1st year as the Treasurer of the cell. Thank you so much.
We would now, without any further ado, like to extend our warmest welcome to our esteemed plenary speaker for day 1 of our international webinar series, Dr. Anu Bashambu, who is a senior group leader at the Institut Pasteur, Paris, France, along with a background in clinical genetics and stem cell biology. Her group aims to understand the mechanism governing cell fate choice during human gonad development using a 2-pronged approach. She's the author of several book chapters and has edited a book on male infertility. Dr. Bashambu is the editor-in-chief of the Kargar Journal on Sexual Development. She serves as the scientific advisor on the select French Parliamentary Committee for Gender Identity and Rights. For her work, she has received several national and international awards, including those from the Endocrine Society of the United States, the Royan International Award for Reproductive Genetics, the Briggs Jail for Reproductive Biology from the French Academy of Sciences, and the Henning Anderson Award from the European Society of Pediatric Endocrinology. Kindly enlighten us with your words, ma'am. We've been eagerly waiting for your address. I would also request the participants who have joined us through both Google Meet and YouTube to type in their queries and questions to Dr. Bashambu's address in the chat box. They will be taken up by ma'am after her address. Thank you, ma'am.
Thank you for your kind words. I feel distinctly underqualified to talk about these matters. Will become clear because I did not face any challenges as a woman. As it happens, I did face challenges in my career, like all of us do, but it was never because I was a woman. So I was one of the lucky few. I am going to go through the data that's available, going to talk about how it happens globally, share some of my personal experiences. Again, that would be challenges in general in science, or maybe in other fields that people go through, not necessarily women, but people in general. Okay, There'd be anecdotes, there'd be stories of my friends who have gone through problems and they have faced challenges because of their gender. It's quite odd, I'm saying that, because I work on sex development and I distinctly work on distinction between sex and gender, which are two different identities. So if you ask me to talk about my work, not 45 minutes, I can talk for 45 hours. I don't need a break in between. I can do that. So I have seen science from Indian perspective and from outside India. I did my master's from AMU, Aligarh Muslim University, in human genetics. And then I did my thesis from National Institute of Immunology. And I have been working in Europe for almost 20 years now. So I moved to Edinburgh as a postdoc, where I got my own grant and continued to work in the lab. And from there, I was directly recruited by Institut Pasteur, first as a staff scientist, and eventually I became a group leader. So starting from my thesis, we all faced problems. I'm sure those of you that are doing thesis and those of you have done thesis have had some issues. I'll come to them. How we all overcome them, we have our own unique perspectives on things. We have our own unique take on things, and we solve things our own way. And then what is the situation in Europe or West in general, including United States? And what's the situation in India and other developing countries and the countries that have patriarchal society in general? So I will start with some numbers that where this gender bias occurs. Can I have the next slide, please? So we know from the data from United Nations that it is a societal pressure, it's a conditioning. It's when a girl is born in many countries, she's told you're different than a boy. Physically, yes, you are. But it has been put in your head that you do not have the same mental capacity as boys. And that happens in many, many societies. I have seen that around me. I escaped it personally, but I have seen that in my own family. I have seen that in my friends. I have seen that around me, where even girls as young as 4 or 6, 8 years of age are told that, you cannot be as smart as boys. And because they are boys, their mental capacity is different. So they are more suited to subjects that require more logical or analytical thinking. That includes STEM, which means science, technology, engineering, and mathematics. And more often than not, it comes from their mothers, it comes from their grandmothers, because that is the conditioning they have had when they were growing up. I'm not saying it's the rule. There are exceptions to this, but by and large, in most of the patriarchal society, this happens to be the case. One of the guests before me quoted saying that women should, Maya Angelou, and I slightly disagree with that. It's like women are never victims. The reason is women should never see themselves as victims, because women should never be meant to feel like victims. Why at such a young age you should be told that you are not as equal to someone who's of the opposite gender? Next, please. Okay. If we look at the education and try and see if there is a gender bias in education, if you look at the primary education, this is the data from about 80 countries from UNESCO, you can see by and large, including India, about 50% of the girls, and these are the pre-university, pre-grad, these are the school girls that are in STEM education. They're studying science and technology and engineering and mathematics. And in countries where you would probably not expect, like in Northern Africa, in Iran, in countries which are traditionally very patriarchal and very male biased societies, these are the girls who are choosing STEM as their stream of education. And for Northern Africa and for Middle East and for India, I have personal experience working very closely with groups in these countries, that most of the students, including even above undergraduate studies, are women. So that looks like a positive, positive trend. However, I want to introduce you to a number which is 29.1%. Just remember this number. Here we see around 50%. Next, please. Then as we move, if you look at the graph here and you look at the trend lines, as we move from primary schools to bachelor's and master's and then further on, we see an increasing trend where there is largest percentage of students that are male, whereas after the master's or equivalent, the percentage of females, they just drop down. This is a general global scenario. In the countries which I have shown you, the Middle Eastern and India and North African countries, even at the thesis level, at least in biological sciences, I know very well that it's more women than men. If we break down this data, this graph, it shows the same thing. Can I have the next slide, please? Okay. So if we look at the education level at the primary level and in school, we see that there are gender differences in choosing your stream of education. And it starts as early as your primary education, and they become more visible as you go towards the higher level of education. The reasoning given for them is that the girls, they appear to lose interest in the STEM subjects. That may be true for in certain cases. But then in certain cases, there are other pressures because of which the girls may not pursue these subjects. Then this gender gap, it becomes more obvious, as I showed you in the previous graph, as you move further in your education. Only about 35% of the students globally, they represent the STEM-related field enrollment. You can see these differences are global, but they change with not only with countries, but also with the disciplines. And in that, the conditioning that I said at the very beginning comes into play, where women are either taught to think that they cannot go beyond a certain level in certain disciplines, or they have themselves thought that, okay, this is a difficult discipline for me to do because of the societal pressures, because of what I have been conditioned for my future role. That might not be the ideal career for me. However, if you look at the technology or ICT computer-related fields, there is a large number of women now that are working in these fields, and that seems to be quite a positive trend. In the higher education studies and later, women, they just seem to disappear. It seems like a leaky pipeline where women, they start education more or less at the same, in STEM field, more or less at the same level as their male counterparts. But as they go on, the numbers seem to be dwindling till the time they come to working, till the time they come to a career in STEM. Can I have the next slide, please? Okay, so as I was saying, that there are many factors that influence these decisions. They go from the most inner one, which is you yourself, or the woman's conditioning, a person herself, extending to the family and peers, then the broader global exposure in their school or in their college or in their work environment, followed by the larger society. So at each level, these girls, they feel a pressure if they decide to study and choose a career in science or in career in technology. In the very beginning, from the inner self, as I said, there are multiple pressures. First is the conditioning that I've been talking about up until now. The the very thought that you're raised to be somebody's daughter, somebody's sister, somebody's wife, somebody's mother, grandmother, why were you never raised? For example, if I say for myself, you can ask the question why I was never raised to be only Anu. Well, that's wrong. I was raised to be Anu. I had a very atypical upbringing, but in general, in the patriarchal societies, the girls are raised to with a role that is defined by their gender. And because of that, as one of the speakers said at the beginning, they're conditioned to take on more and more roles. They're conditioned to say, okay, as a sister, this is your duty. As a daughter, this is your duty. As a mother, this is your duty. And that means taking more and more work upon themselves, taking more and more jobs upon themselves. And that also reflects once they start working in a career. For example, the representation of women in STEM institutions is low because what I call as the good girl syndrome or Bharatiya Nari syndrome, which is not true only for the Indian women, but in general, most of the women in the patriarchal society, where women on average take up more work than men. And that in turn substantially affects their productivity, their effort in their career, and that affects their tenure and promotion. And eventually you do not see a large number of women as you go and progress in your career. These pressures are not there when you are young. So you can continue when you're a student or when you're doing your secondary education or you're doing your pre-university education, you can continue. But once it comes and you start your responsibility as a mother or as a wife, then these pressures take up your time. The way the societies are being conditioned by and large are like, it is a mother's job to raise the children. Father will contribute, but it's a mother's job. It's a wife's job to run the household. She might be working as hard as her husband in work, but when it comes to the household, in general, she would have the lion's share of work. And most of us revel in that because that is what we have been taught. We have been taught in our upbringing. We don't think it's anything unusual. Now the question here arises: why should we not think it is unusual? Why are we trained not to think it is unusual that you are supposed to share the lion's share of work? Because when you do that at home, I'm not saying don't do any work at home, but why should not there be an equal participation of both the partners? Coming to the family and peers, it's very well documented that leading to the birth and after up until the time that their child is up to 6 months old, women are likely to experience reduced productivity, obviously due to natural reasons. In most of the cases, I will come to that how, and I have personal experience of friends who have experienced this. This is considered as a negative factor against them, and it is not, or against us, and it is not taken into account while counting their productivity towards promotions, towards tenure. There are laws for it, and there are governments, including the government of India and several institutes that are factoring this. But still, in this fast-moving world of science, if you're out of loop for, let's say, 1 year, for 9 months, science has moved forward at such a fast pace that you will need another 1.5 years to come and catch up with what you lost in those 9 months. Can I have the next one, please? This is a very interesting statistics where I was quite surprised to see that if we look at the percentage of girls that pursue STEM as the career, and this data comes from about 80 countries, that if you have a larger number of female teachers during your higher education, the number of girls that stay in STEM is much higher than if you have a larger number of male teachers. And that is attributed probably to those women teacher being the positive role models for these girls. So that seems to be one of the positive aspects that influences how girls and women, they take up STEM as their career. Can I have a next one, please? Again, talking about school and conditioning, I want to show you these two excerpts from textbooks. One has been taken from an Indonesian book and one from an Indian book, where you can clearly see that in most of the activities, if you see the cartoons, it's a boy who's depicted. It is indirectly conditioning. People who study psychology, they would understand it. It is the indirect conditioning where you associate these activities with the male. And then if you look at these, the figure on the right, which has been taken from on your left, basically, which has been taken from an Indian textbooks. There are different areas of brain that are associated with your logical or your cognitive thinking, and it is shown that when it comes to logical thinking, when it comes to physical activities, it's always depicted by a boy. And when it comes to inquisitiveness, it is depicted by a boy, whereas you can see the girls are more into logical thinking, into more aesthetic thinking. And indirectly, and these are the primary school textbooks. At that time, you are not thinking in terms of gender by and large, despite the societal pressures saying that, okay, you are a girl, you are a boy, but this stays in your head. That being a girl, probably that might be your gender role, and being a boy, that might be your gender role, and that indirectly can influence your decision when you try and take up a career in STEM. Next, please. Okay, so I talked about the societal pressures, and if I summarize them, as I've been talking about, there are a lot of cultural and social norms that conditions your perceptions about what you can do or what you can't do, what is your perceived role in the society, and based on that, how should you define your career and your aspirations in life. Personally, I do not agree with it, but that's the truth of the society. And this actually very, very clearly influences a woman's participation and performance in STEM. There are countries in Northern Europe where there is greater gender equality, and the conditioning is not as strong as it is in the patriarchal society. If you look in the Scandinavian countries, or if you look in the Germanic countries, where there is much more gender equality in terms of when I say in terms of the mental gender equality, the girls, they seem to have a much more positive attitude and confidence about STEM subjects. And if you look in Finland or in the Scandinavian countries, there is a larger number of women that are in STEM careers at a higher position as compared to the global average. So that does play a very important role. Some of you may not agree with me, some of you may agree with me, but the data shows that your conditioning and the society's general perception of the gender identity and the gender role play a very, very strong factor in how you choose your career, what you choose as your career, and what you continue as your career. Then this gender stereotyping I have shown you in the books, that start from a very early age, that continues in the wider society around us, that continues in media, and that is picked up by children, adults, and that directly or indirectly influences how we see ourselves and how people around us see us and how we see others. And most of us do succumb to these pressures. We can change that into positive by using the same media to try and change these gender stereotypes and gender identities. But maybe I'm talking about a utopian word, but that may be a very, very positive way forward. Can we go to the next one, please? Okay. So the next, please. I'll come to that in a while. Okay, so I gave you a number 29.1%. at the beginning. That is the number of women that are currently employed by STEM in the world. Despite being 50% of the working population, it's only about 29.1% women that are working in STEM. If we look at the statistics by UNESCO Institute of Statistics, about 50%, as I showed you before, are still there at the undergraduate level in sciences. At masters, it goes slightly up at 55%. Understandably, it goes down a bit at 44% when it comes to the PhD. It's not everybody's cup of tea. But when it comes to working, it is 29.1%. That is at the career level positions. Can I go to the previous slide, please? And if we see it further in time, that about out of 12 students that graduate with STEM major, only 3 continue to work after 10 years. Only about, let's say 25% again, they continue to work after 10 years within the same field that they graduated in. Most of them seem to drop out. Next, please. So the question is, where have all these women gone? Why are they just leaking out of this STEM pipeline, as you may call, starting from primary education to secondary to higher education to work and then career progression? They seem to be going down at every step. It's like a slow drip from a tap. And if we look, I'm sorry for this, this slide in French, but basically, it very clearly shows, I can just show you these key numbers. The high number that you see is 77%. These are the European numbers, but the 77% is a negative number because this shows that of the people who are employed part-time, 77% are women. So most of the women after a certain age or after a certain time in their career choose to become part-time. If we look at 18%, that is the percentage of salary that women get less than the men, and that's the global average. There is a disproportionate gender disequality in what women are being paid, and that is true even for STEM. Except we know that in IT, for some reason, women are paid higher than men. And that probably is, as I said in the beginning, that there is an increase in the women who are taking ICT careers. And that is giving them a position of power where they can demand an equal pay or more pay. In very, very small letters, about 65% of the women, of the people who are uneducated in or illiterate in the world, 65% are women. So there is a higher percentage of women that do not get educated, and that again reflects a societal pressure, but that goes beyond what we are talking about women and their role in science. But in general, it contributes to the societal bias towards the gender identity against the women. If we go towards the higher roles in enterprises and higher roles in education and the higher roles in societies, only about 13% of the administrative councils in the world are women, despite being 50% in the workforce in general. And when we talk about science and we talk about the biggest prize, we all say, okay, you know, women have got this prize and that award and this award. L'Oreal has and UNESCO have award for women entrepreneurs and women scientists. But when we look at the biggest honor, say the Nobel Prize, up until now, 100 years down the line, it's only about 5.5% women that have won the prize of all the Nobel Prize winners. So there's a disparity even up until that level. Can we go to the next slide, please? And why do we have this inequality? And what are the challenges we face that because of this inequality? First is the stereotypes. As I said, oh, women can't do that. That is a stereotypical, which personally for me is an insult, saying that a woman can't do that. As one of the speakers said at the very beginning, that women probably are born scientists. Women are probably are more stronger mentally. But when you go in a workplace, you face these prejudices because you're a woman. Maybe that's why you're not qualified, or you are not, I wouldn't say qualified, but you probably are not prepared to take this job. I personally faced a bias, not because I was a girl, because it came from women saying, oh, you know, you must spend time taking care of your appearance. So how can you be qualified enough to do as much work as someone who's coming to the lab in a chappal, Kolhapuri chappal and jeans? Now expand that to at a bigger level, where men see as women as frivolous because they, oh, you are pretty, but you may not be able to do this because you may not be as committed to work. It might sound very, very, very biased, but that is the truth. And many of people I know, and I'm sure that you know, who have faced these issues in their work environment. I have not shown you one statistics, and this stereotype actually turns into racism as well when it comes to work, which might not be a big problem in India, but in the Western world, if you look at the number of women who are in STEM, who are working in STEM, as I said, the global average is 29.1%. But if you further break it down with the ethnicity, the number is very, very variable, with the women of Asian origin making up about 7%, and the women African American making up about, I think, 14% of the workforce, and women who are of Latino origin making up even lesser number. So that is stereotyping the women into based on their appearance, based upon their origin, based upon their race, and then telling them, because you are of this origin, you're of this race, you're of this color, you are a woman, you probably are not qualified enough to do this job. Can I have the next slide, please? This is the black sheep effect, and it's a very, very well-defined effect in what constitutes a big challenge for most of the people in new workplace. And that becomes doubly challenging for women when they go in STEM in other fields is that, ironically, the early career women who showed sufficient qualifications, who are distinctly qualified and who show promise, are more helped by men. So my thesis, my postdoc mentor was a woman who helped me by promoting me in the sense she saw me as an independent thinker, and she promoted me by giving me a chance to become independent at a very, very early stage in my career by applying for a tenure, which most of the people did not have. But probably she did, well, I'm not going to guess her thoughts, but overtly, she did not do it because I was a woman. She did because she said she did so because she thought I can show independent thinking and I'm qualified to be able to take a tenure. But she did promote me above other people in the lab. However, the person who promoted me was my mentor for when I started as an early career scientist in Pasteur, where he saw me for 6 months of what I was capable of doing and then let me walk away. And with the caveat that if I do not prove myself within the next few months, I'm on my own. And all of us need that helping hand when we are going upwards with our careers, because you are very good, but you always need a mentor and a support at the very early stages of your career. Surprisingly enough, if you look at these early mentorship roles in globally in STEM, it is very well documented that it's women who are less likely than men to help early career women, but with a caveat. They will help the early career women who are sufficiently qualified, who show sufficient gumption, who show sufficient enthusiasm, who show sufficient promise. But as soon as they see that you might not have that promise, it's the women who would not be promoting you. So it is as soon, and the reason for that is, as I said, the black sheep effect, that even in the family, when everyone sees someone who's different and who goes against what's perceived as the family values or the family conditioning, they try and either they bring them back in the flock, which is something I had undergone myself with my extended family, because my parents raised me as an independent thinker, and they said, okay, you're Anu, so go ahead and do what you want. But with the caveat that you are responsible for what you want. You don't come back and ask us to clean up your messes if you make a mess. However, that meant me making a very early choice in my life. What I wanted in my life was a career, and that's how I wanted to take it. But my extended family, which is very conservative, they tried to bring me back into the flock. They saw me as a black sheep who's trying to go against the family tradition of getting married at 22 or 24 and having 3 kids and having a successful home life and choosing a career above it. They decided to bring me back into it. And the reason for that was their idea of that the family would be perceived negatively. Now, directly extrapolate that to the work situation, because women who were a generation above ours, they had it definitely much more difficult than us, because even in the West, even though the society might be a bit more emancipated and a bit less patriarchal than in India and Middle East and in the North African countries, and probably other countries that I may not know about. But up until, let's say, 50 years ago, or up until 80 years ago, suffragettes were still fighting for women equality, and we were still nowhere near equality even in the West. Women do have more emancipation. So the people who came, the generations that came before us, they had it harder, and they worked hard to make a place for women in science, in general in work, but I'm talking about in STEM. Now, if they think that someone who is not qualified enough, and if they decide to promote that person, then their own reputation is online. So that's why this perception that women do not promote other young women, which could simply be because, which could be true in certain cases, which I will show, or it could simply be because they, with their experience and with their work experience, they do not find them sufficiently qualified. But on the other hand, can I go to the next slide, please? Can I have the next slide, please? Thank you. As I said, the other side of the coin is what we call the queen bee effect, where the women who have reached the position of power, and there is a certain number of women who have reached that higher echelon in their chosen field, and that includes STEM, and they are supposed to mentor the girls and the women who followed. And most of them do if the girls that follow are sufficiently qualified. But then there is a group of people who we call as queen bees, and this is a documented condition in sociological studies, that they refuse to be mentors to those who follow. So what is supposed to be this professional sisterhood, it's missing. And they probably would not promote the women who are sufficiently qualified. It could be the fear, it could be the insecurities, it could be the thought of being overshadowed by someone they might perceive as smarter than them. And I have seen that with colleagues, and I have seen that with people I know who have gone through this situation where their mentor deliberately did not promote them. They did nothing negative, but they did not become a positive influence either. That goes for both men and women mentors. However, since, as I said, that the women and the generation before us had a much tougher going, they probably were perceived to help out the succeeding women. But as it happens, if they don't, this is perceived as a negative mentorship. Can we have a next one, please? I think you missed out a slide there. Never mind. Let's go to the next one, please. Okay. The biggest challenge most of the women that once they start working, they face is harassment. The first that I showed you about, that someone saying that, okay, you can't do this because you're too pretty to do this. You can't do this because you're a girl. It is not sexual harassment per se, but it is a form of it. There's a very, very wide definition of that, and it is being redefined every day. One very, very classic situation that a very close friend of mine had also undergone is that the girls hear that, oh, your CV is impressive and you work very well, but oh, you got married. Or in the West, when are you going to start a family, because your biological clock is ticking? So one of my very close friends, who was a university topper, she decided to get married for whatever reason during her thesis, and she got pregnant despite her being a brilliant student and probably one of the hardest worker I have seen. She was constantly being, I would call it harassment, but she was constantly being questioned for her commitment to her work because she decided to have a family, she decided to get married. Now, I said at the very beginning that, okay, I made a choice not to get married, not to have children. But the question is, why is it that being a girl, you have to make, or I have to make a choice that I would have to choose either my family or my career? Why more men don't have to make these choices? Then once you decide to get married, as I said, you have to play the role of a wife, and by and large in a patriarchal society, you end up taking the lion's share of work. And you take it upon yourself because you are conditioned to do that. Luckily, I decided to get married to someone who shared basically whatever I did and who shared my beliefs, and we had an equal partnership. But the question here arises, why did I have to justify that being a woman? Isn't that a kind of a harassment? Isn't that a kind of discrimination against me by being a woman, that I have to justify my choices? How many men in the world, I'm sure there is a small percentage who have to make these choices in their career, that they have to have a family or a career. And if they have a family, they are questioned about their commitment to their career and the choices that they make in their career, especially in science. Can I have the next one, please? And because of these discriminations, as I said, the women, they take, and the conditioning, the women take it upon themselves to prove themselves harder, much more than their male counterparts. As I talked about the good girl syndrome, because of this, the girls end up taking more and more and more work upon themselves to prove that they are equal or they are better. They don't have to do that, but in the general pressures that we have at the moment, in the challenges we have at the moment as a woman working in science, this is what happens. And as a result of the girls taking extra pressure upon themselves, their productivity suffers, which in turn has an effect on their tenure, on their promotions. So that becomes like a vicious cycle, that the more you try to work, the more affects your productivity, you don't get the tenure, you stay at the lower rungs of the professional cycles. one thing that I'm seeing here, that all, it being a women's cell, all the participants in this are women. So because the representation of the women in science is still very low, the women scientists, we frequently participate in these committees or in these meetings where most of us are women, right? And this can feel a little constraining. It's like preaching to the converted. Because we all are here, we know what the challenges are, we must have faced them, or we know the people who have faced them. Why aren't the people because of whom these challenges were initially faced are a part of these committees or not invited to be a participant in these meetings? If I preach to the converted, it's not going anywhere. And also, it does not bring anything fresh to the discussion. Because you get the other perspective, you don't get the other perspective from their point of view. What I'm saying is my perception, what the other side thinks. That's what I think, what the other side thinks. I don't know they think like that. Based on what I see around, based on what my perception is, that is what I think. So we lack that free and fresh contribution to these discussions. And most of the challenges that women face in science are common across the globe. They are common across the disciplines. It starts from self-questioning. It starts from guilt and doubt when you're conditioned that, okay, you have to give that much time to your family and you're not able to because you want to give that much time to your work. That comes into guilt and lack of self-confidence. Fear of combining an academic career with the families. These are everywhere, and these are in everyone, in most of the people. Can I go to the next one? So how do we go from here? So I have not told you anything so far that you already did not know or did not go through. I'm not saying all of us went through the same situation, but we know somebody who has one or the other of those situations. We might have been a part of that situation. Where do we go forward from there? Okay, so again, I bring you to the same 4 levels. You start from yourself by stopping to ask yourself the question, am I good enough? Why do you need to ask that question, you are good enough just because you're a girl? You're as good as the next person. You have to strengthen your self-confidence, and that comes to the general family and peers as well, because you need that at a young age to condition you. As I said, that at the moment the conditioning is you are a girl most of the times, you cannot do this, which the boys can do in most of the patriarchal societies. That is how you're taught. So this probably is a utopian dream, but maybe changes in the society where you're no longer taught that you cannot do this because you are a girl. Changing the perception of family and peers. It is changing in urban societies in general, more in patriarchal countries than in other places, but it is a very, very slow process. I showed you examples in school where the textbooks, very simple thing like textbook images are there, which subconsciously steers you towards gender inequality or gender roles or perceived gender roles. These are very small things. So if as a girl, as a 5 or 6 year girl, I look in my book and I see the cartoon of a girl who's running, who's thinking logically, as well as a boy, in my head, I'm not going to think at that age that, oh, it's a boy who can do the running and the girl cannot. It's like, oh, okay, a child can do it. I can do it. You can do it. It doesn't matter if you're a girl or a boy. So these are very, very small changes, but it go a long way towards the conditioning of your mind, towards the conditioning of your perception and your conditioning of how you think. Positive role models in schools, university, colleges, obviously. in general society. Now that is for me, that is the biggest problem, and for me, that is the biggest challenge as well. In general, globally, everywhere, including India, can we go to the next slide, please? There are many initiatives that are being taken to empower women in STEM, and that includes lots of organizations like UNESCO, private organizations, Girls Can Code. You can have DBT and DST initiatives in India that are geared towards women for empowering them and face the challenges that they face in science, including return fellowships when the women decide to rejoin a career after having a child. There is Vice UK, which is a very good initiative that has end goal of having 50% representation of women in STEMs in workforce by 2025, I think. UNESCO has that layer by 2030 globally. So these are the initiatives that come externally. In India, being an Indian, I see it from outside at this point of time, and I see some very unique problems in my country. Now, I have to admit, I have not lived there for almost 20 years, but despite being married to an Irish person, I still hold an Indian passport. So I still am an Indian. I refuse to give that up and identify as an Indian. Being that does not mean that I cannot see what's wrong with India. I do love India, but what I see in the present socio-political climate, the line between nationalism and patriotism is being very highly blurred. Okay, and that is having a very negative reflection on the scientific temperament of the society. I have not seen any data from India coming out for the last, I would say 7 years. 2013 was the last data I saw. But the latest report by the Ministry of HRD is unfortunately showing that the general growth of women in the society is on the decline. This is the data on 20 states and union territories, not from all the states and union territories. In general, there is a decline in the acceptance of the girl's role. There's a general decline in the girl's safety. And why does it relate to science? Because in most of our fields, that if we have to do field work, the boys don't have to face this challenge if they have to go out at 10 o'clock or 12 o'clock and collect samples or go for a field study at midnight. They do not have the similar challenges that if a girl who decides to go out at 10 o'clock at night for a field study or sample collection, if she has to, not that she should, but if she has to. And the perception that and the solution that comes for that is, oh, the girls should try and do their work before it becomes dark. That is a very, very unique gender discrimination I see there, which I don't see in Europe, that, okay, you're a girl, you should finish your work before 7 o'clock and be home. If you need to work till midnight, you are working till midnight without the thought, oh, I'm a girl, it's difficult for me to go back at 12 o'clock at night. And this has become, and looking at how unsafe it is becoming it always has been. Even when I was living there, I had heard that, and I had been told that, okay, try and be back before dark. But 20 years down the line, if the situation is still the same, probably we are not doing enough to rectify that. And this is posing a unique challenge for the girls who want to work in STEM in the field. Second is, as I said, is the loss of scientific temperament. And as I said, that between nationalism and patriotism, the lines are being very, very blurred. We are being taught about the golden era of 2000 years ago. It was golden era, but the word has gone 2000 years beyond that. Lot has changed. We do have to keep up with that. And so that comes from changing from your inner perception, as I said at the very beginning, and changes in the general society around us. Then some of the things that I hear is that women are not equally represented in publications. If you look at PubMed, actually, surprisingly, it's higher number of women authors in scientific publications, at least in biology, I can say. However, what's there is that probably as a senior author, there are a signing author, there are not as many women as there should be. And again, that is related to the number of women who leak out after their graduate degree. As a graduate, as a postgraduate, as a PhD student, you have publications. But when you start going beyond that, as I said, there's a leaky pipeline, lots of women drop out, and that reflects in less number of women being senior authors in publications. Also, the recent mandate of UGC funding being reduced is going to have an adverse effect of women taking up active careers in STEM, because that was a big initiative, and that was a big incentive for women and men as well from every background to take up STEM as a career. These are, despite DBT and DSD doing very affirmative and very positive actions at many levels, these are the things that probably very unique to India should be addressed if we have to look at the way forward. As I said, that I am in a very, I feel myself very inadequate to try and say that, okay, this is the challenge and this is what you should do to rectify it, because my challenges had been the same as any other boy in my lab. And that came from the personality of the mentor. My challenges were never because, oh, you are a girl, so that's why you cannot do this, or you're a girl, you should not be doing that. On the other hand, I don't think I ever got a disproportionate advantage being a girl either. That is the other side of gender inequality we don't talk about, because all these that I've talked about women, about 3% of the men in the world go through all this in different careers in STEM. But then if you talk about that 97% are women who are going through this, so we definitely are at a disadvantage there. So as far as I'm concerned, this is a very personal view, and I'm pretty sure quite a lot of you will disagree with it. The change will have to come from within, which has to influence, and with the help of our immediate family and peers. And the change from within will have to influence the wider society rather than the society influencing you to change yourself. That is the way forward. Personally, for women to pursue a career in science, for a woman to continue with a career in science, we can't change that. We are the ones who are going to have kids, and we will have to take time out to have kids if we want kids. We can't change that fact. But what we can try and change is the perception of people around us that now that you have had a kid, you're not committed to your career as you should be, because no one asks a father to work harder to prove themselves in any career, not only STEM. They don't ask a father to prove themselves harder for their commitment to work just because they have become a parent. On the other hand, when a girl becomes a parent, she had to work harder to prove herself, to show that she has got a family career balanced, and she's equally committed to her career as she is to her family. And that, as I said at the very beginning, negatively impacts their productivity, and they go into that vicious cycle. So I don't think I'm going to sermonize. I'm just going to stop here, and I would like to discuss it with all of you, what your perceptions are and what you think your challenges are, and what do you think you would be doing to take it forward. So I'd just like to stop here and say thanks.
Thank you, ma'am, for the very insightful session. I think the house is open for the question and answer session now. And I would be inviting Dr. Vailina Bora, ma'am, who will be moderating the questions. And then I think we can take the discussion forward.
Another thing, Bhavya, I would like to add, all the participants who are on YouTube, because we have more than 600 registered participants, and the questions are overflowing. So maybe ma'am will not be able to take all today. We will give you a link through which you can post, but certainly we will take up some questions because there are just many questions. So, ma'am, I understand you have a meeting. You told me you have to leave by 4:15. So how much time can you spare with us?
I'll have to do a meeting from here. I told you I had to rush back home because of, so I had a problem with Google Meet at work because Pastor does not allow us to use it.
Okay.
We are allowed to use Teams, Microsoft Teams. So I literally had to rush back, and I have another meeting, so I can just do it from home. So what's the time now?
Ma'am, IST 3:50.
Pardon?
Indian
Yeah,
Standard Time.
I'm absolutely okay up until 4:30. That's fine. 4:30 India time. That's absolutely fine.
And Professor Daman Saluja, ma'am, even ma'am has a DBT meeting, so I had pulled ma'am from there. So, ma'am, shall we go till 4:30? Is that okay? Ma'am, please unmute yourself. Daman, ma'am, please unmute yourself.
Yeah. There is another meeting by university at 4 o'clock.
Okay.
So it was very nice listening to you, and especially when you said that it was not really I'm not into this kind of thing. I'm giving my personal perspective, but you had really put in all the data and analyzed it and expressed it very well and encouraged all the youngsters that they should not feel discouraged by the gender bias in India, what they hear. And a lot of places, I really fully agree with you. A wonderful talk. I must thank you and congratulate you for that.
Thank you. Well, I mean, I could speak. I lived in India for the first almost 30 years of my life. So the gender biases, I luckily personally did not face from my family, but I saw that all around me. I've seen that in my family. I've seen that. And I'm not saying it's unique to India. In France, we are working towards gender equality. I'm a part of the French Parliamentary Committee who is working towards it. Basically, my role is to try and work on the perception that women's brains are different than men, which I think may be daft, but it is not scientifically, no. But and they're different just because we are conditioned differently, and that again is more social than. So thank you very much, and I'm sure most of you might not agree with most of what I said, but thanks again.
So go ahead.
Ma'am, before we continue with the question and answer session, I would request Chief Guest Professor Daman Saluja, ma'am, to kindly share her views. Since ma'am has to leave early, we would like to hear you, please, ma'am.
Oh, sure. So in many things, I fully agree with you and Dr. Anu, and I think many of us, or almost all of us, would agree. The perception now, I think, is changing in urban society. And I would say men as a father to a daughter is very different than a man to his wife. But I think one more generation, it will change, because now they see for their daughters, they are aspiring as high as they are aspiring for their sons. So they encourage their daughters, especially I see in urban areas, irrespective of the economic. I even see, casual workers talking about also sending their children to schools, and especially girls, because I think they see it around among other people wherever they are working. So I think it will take some more time before we will have this equal opportunity kind of thing. Another thing I noticed, what you said, women helping, mentoring the women colleagues is also important. Some places it may be some conflict of interest or conflict may come up. But in general, I have seen wherever there have been good mentoring by the female supervisor in research, they have really encouraged their students, especially female students. or maybe because we are working in life sciences, and in life sciences, because there are more female students are there, so they are able to relate both at the academics level, at the senior level, as well as at the student level. There are more female students, so they are encouraging them. You will be surprised, actually. I don't know how many of you know, in botany department in Delhi University and in many departments, it was an unwritten law not to hire a female in the departments. They would say the female should go for college teaching, not for the department jobs. And I know first few women faculty members, they had so much struggle to get into faculty positions in the department. That means post-graduation and research position, because of the reasons really outlined by you, that once they will have children, they will not be able to come regularly, they will not be able to do justice with research, they will not be able to spend time in research. Some problems still persist, working late hours, going to meetings at late hours, and that casual interaction with the peers after dinner on a glass of wine kind of a thing, they are not there. Because it is considered that the women should come back home, take care of the children and their homework and their food, etc. But it is still continuing. I would not say that it has changed completely. But people have become more and more understanding, especially those who are in working. There is a difference between working class and business class also in their thinking. And while you were saying we must have many to such discussions so that their perspective change, their opinion changes, I was just thinking that, there should be a kind of a survey from the men folks to really find out what do they think about their working wives, so that we can really bring changes in the society based on what they think and how they think. So something like that can be done, an initiative. It's a very good idea that you said, that it is like we are preaching the converters. It's no point. So women who are already in science, who have struggled, who have come to some extent, if we are preaching them, it is not going to help. But if we can, organize some of the surveys like that and look into this kind of an area, then I think it will gradually make a change. Another thing, a point I would like to mention from your talk was, as you mentioned, DST, DBT are doing a lot. They have come up with various fellowships. They have come with various awards. Even at government level, at school level, there are single girl child fellowship and stuff. Higher education fellowships are there for girl child. There are such initiatives, but they are like a drop in the ocean. We need to really encourage more so that we can bring many more females who are interested in studies, higher education. They should come into the mainstream. And again, on Women's Day, DBT, DST always have a get together, but it is all women discussion and all women, presentations and achievements. So I think we need to rope in more males. It should be open to all rather than only to female scientists. So I think with time, things are changing and they will further improve, but we really need some kind of enhancers, as we call it science. Some enhancer molecules, proteins are required to really take it faster so that we can reach many of the Western countries. As you said, you never have to think about coming back home before dark. I also tell my students, because it is not safe in Delhi. You know, I tell my students, please start early, especially female students, please start early and finish in time. Because if you are working till late, I feel, keep feeling, I hope they have reached safe. So many a times if they have longer experiment, I tell them to call somebody from home or send me at least an SMS once they have reached home. Because you are worried about their safety. You feel science to ho jayegi, but safety is also very important. So, but we are living in a society like that, so we have no choice other than that. So, so we have to, you know, education in among people, and it has to start from home. We have to also educate our sons, I would say, to respect women as much as they respect men. So they must consider their sisters and their, you know, sister-in-laws and everybody else as equals, and then only the things will gradually change, and whether it is science or in society or anywhere. And I think we will gradually improve, and younger generation has a much brighter scenario as compared to how we have come up struggling, and it will be further improved as you people grow up. And be a fighter, be a fighter, does not matter. They want us to prove it, right? We can prove it. We have enough talent among females, and we have enough you know, whatever, as Principal Dr. Savita Roy was telling, that we are more stronger than men in many aspects, emotionally, morally, in many other aspects. So if they want proof, we will prove it. Okay, all the best. Thank you, Dr. Anu.
Thank
It
you.
was a very interesting lecture. Once again.
Thank you.
Over to
Thank you,
I
ma'am.
must thank Anita for inviting me here for such a wonderful talk.
Thank you so much, ma'am, for accepting our invitation.
Thank you, ma'am. Ma'am, before you go, we would like to request Dr. Kusum Lata ma'am, Dr. Vailina Bora ma'am, and Dr. Anita Garg Mangla ma'am to kindly present our token of appreciation and gratitude to Chief Guest, Professor Daman Saluja ma'am.
Thank
Ma'am,
you
it was
so much. Thank you
so
so much.
nice to listen to you, ma'am. Thank you so much for sparing time for us.
Thank you. So
Now we yes, ma'am.
I might leave to join the other meeting of the university. It may be a short meeting. Please excuse me, Dr. Anu and Anita and Dr. Savita. So thank you for inviting me once again. Maybe I will join tomorrow for your meeting for the talk.
Yes, ma'am,
Thank you.
please. We look forward. Thank you so much.
Thank you for your gracious.
Now, I will be requesting Dr. Vailina Bora ma'am to kindly address the various plethora of questions that we have received for Dr. Anu ma'am. And I have sent so many
Can I just do
questions.
something? Please just call me Anu.
No,
Please.
please. I am sorry,
It's
ma'am.
very uncomfortable for me, so please just call me Anu.
All right, ma'am. Vailina ma'am, kindly take over with the questions. I'm waiting for my question to be answered, honestly.
You can start.
Yeah. I think, I will start with your question only, since like we got a lot of questions and Bhavya has taken out time while coordinating the meeting to choose a few questions which we cannot ignore, basically. So first I will start with Bhavya's question only. She's asking, mansplaining and women's subjugation in the workplace are common phenomena. As a student, I have also experienced them in debates and discussions very commonly. How do you think this is the ideal way to navigate these things? Should we be calling boys out for this?
Yes. That's a very simple answer. Yes. Because it's very, very simple. I have to use public transport because I live outside Paris. It's to go into work every day. And it's not something unique to India, by the way. So I have seen a man sitting in seat front of me in the train with the leg basically mansplaining, and it was extremely uncomfortable because I had to keep my legs in between his legs to sit in front of him. And I just get there and just said, like, could you please close your legs? This is very uncomfortable for me. And it was difficult to say, first of all, because my French wasn't very good at that point of time. But it was such a shock to him that he just got up and sat on the other seat because he did not expect you to say it. So as you said, women's subjugation, that should not even be a question. Why? This is nothing to do with, man sitting like that or something like that. This is just a question of why did he think he should be comfortable with whatever posturing he is doing, and why should you think you do not have a right to say a word against it? The easiest way is, for me, as far as that again is my personal view, is just, and I have told that to my postdoc who had something worse done to her in public transport. So it's the same thing. You go and confront. She had a man exposing himself to her, and I just told her, you have a phone, take it to him and say, okay, you like to show, I'll record you. Again, as I was saying, this affirmative action has to come from within you, right? You don't have to think, can I ask you or can I tell you what to do? Your right is, I have the same right as you in this work environment. I feel uncomfortable by some of your actions. Would you please rectify that? That would be the first thing. If the person is not receptive to that, then there are, I'm sure there is a women's cells that you have there. You have got authorities that you can lodge your complaint and say, listen, I'm uncomfortable with this. Can we resolve this? It doesn't have to be confrontational. You just have to go and register your displeasure and say, and your discomfort. Yeah?
Yeah. I think you answered about men spreading, like physical. Mansplaining.
That again comes from the perception that they know more than you. Right?
Yes. Actually, yes, ma'am. My question was like, when I go for debates or discussions, at times it just so happens that whatever you're saying before you've even opened your mouth is going to be rejected because they assume that you're coming from a position that's inferior. So, and even in such formal settings, the question, you always have this inhibition at the back of your mind that this is a formal setting. Should I be calling them out for it in such a setting? Should I be calling out a boy for doing this maybe in a competitive spirit? Maybe it's a competitive spirit. Should I be raising my voice at this juncture or not?
You answered your own question. You said that it is there always in the back of my mind. Should I be doing it? Okay. It should not be a question in your head, should you be doing it or not? If you are confident with your facts, if you are confident that what you are saying holds up scientifically, holds up factually, you don't have to think. They have their own perception that, okay, you are mentally inferior to them, which shows their mental inferiority, which is again goes disproportionate. But why would someone, just because he is of a different gender or she's of a different gender, would assume that someone from a different gender have different mental capacity than the other person? So if you are 100% sure about your scientific facts, if you are 100% sure about your factual presentation, whatever argument you are going to pose there, you have every right as a second person. Just because you think you are a girl and you would be perceived as aggressive, that again comes to your perception your perception and the societal perception of you. Because think about it, if there was a boy in the same position and you were saying something and he thought what you were saying was wrong or right, he'll immediately interrupt you and say, no, you're wrong. I'm not saying all the boys would do that, but by and large, most of the boys would do that. He would not think that, and then because he would not have that in his mind that if he interrupts you and asks questions, he would be perceived as aggressive. Whereas you have this in your head that if you do that, you'd be perceived as aggressive. So that is why in the last graph that I showed that this self-affirmation has to come from inside you. Only then it can spread outside. And I'm sorry for mishearing you at the very beginning. I heard manspreading, I didn't hear manspreading.
Important to discuss right now, so that's fine.
Because I have had that discussion a couple of days ago with my postdoc who suffered through that.
The second question comes from Tamanna, and she is asking, because of gender inequality, do the topics which are supposed to be researched upon, if it's related to women, does it get rejected if you are proposing a project which has to do with, for example, breast cancer awareness and all? So because it is proposed by a woman or it's related to a woman, does it get a backseat?
Again, it comes from you. So do you know what I work on? I work on how ovaries and testes develop and how they affect the development of the external genitalia. That is what I work on. And when I talk in meetings, I hear sometimes sniggers. For me, talking about genitals or gonads is as simple as talking about my nose and my eyes or my hands. Okay? And I'm supposed to be the word leader in this field, despite being a young girl. And I go and talk about it. That's because first thing in my head was that I have to take that inhibition out of myself, that there is a subject that's appropriate for men, there is a subject that's appropriate for women. What I'm interested in, I use it as a model for self-aimed choice, a very basic scientific biological question. But essentially, I work with patients who have got atypical genitalia, and I talk about it all the time. And that never got rejected because it was proposed by a girl. Okay. Having said that, again, due to all the pressures that I've been talking about earlier, even in medicine, when the girls, they go and study and they want to go for super specialization, it is said, oh, you take the easy option out. You take OBGY, you take PEDS, you take a GP surgery that are much easier than going into neurosurgery or cardiac surgery or more high pressure surgical jobs. If you think you are qualified enough to do it, again, I will reaffirm it has to be self-assertion. If you think, and that self-assertion doesn't have to be with aggression, it has to be with belief in yourself, it has to be with facts in your favor, it has to be with scientific rigor in your favor. If you think you want to work on breast cancer, and you think, oh, people are saying because you're talking about breast, nah. Maybe probably then you are not, if that's the perception in your head, you have to think more about how you see things rather than how people see you saying it. You have to think about, okay, I want to work on breast cancer. I want to work on maybe genetics of it, epidemiology of it, whatever part of it you want to work on. Do I know enough about it? Do I have a scientific background to support it? Do I have enough knowledge to support what I'm proposing? And does it have an appropriate endpoint that I can justify at the end of it? These should be your only constraints. I don't think your constraint should be that being a girl, I should be talking about this subject or that subject, or it would be rejected because I'm a girl. No, it is mostly rejected because you're not scientifically rigorous enough when you propose a subject.
Thank you. The next question is from Rashmi. She is a faculty member of WDC and from English department. She is asking, recently Germany became the first country where 30% is reserved in corporate sector for women. It also pledges to expand that support to developing countries. Will it work in a country like India, as it could be considered a step to bolster women empowerment where parliamentary representation of women is very low?
I think you guys are more qualified than me to answer this question because I left India, as I said, almost 20 years ago when women empowerment was still much lower than what it is today. I don't say it's brilliant today, but it's going upwards. Now, you answer me. I'm going to ask you a counter question to that. Okay? In a country where when you go out, as I gave the example very early on, is the boy is not said most of the times, the boy is not told that you come back home at night before it gets dark. In a country where the girl is said that get back home before dark, in a society where they say, okay, it's okay to harass a girl because of what she's wearing, but they don't say to your boys that keep your trousers zipped. Okay. How do you think giving 30% as a firm work a guaranteed job to women in any sector would help women empowerment? A Mandal Commission was brought in India in the 80s or 90s, and that was supposed to empower the so-called lower strata of the society.
Right.
And that was unfortunately based on caste-based and not socioeconomic strata-based. Do you think 30 or 40 years down the line, 30 years down the line, it has really empowered that particular strata of the society? There is a certain percentage it will help, but that is again augmented by other factors, not only by a law. You can guarantee 30% reservation for women in workplace. There is reservation for women in workplace in India. I don't know exactly what percentage it is. You can guarantee an increased reservation, but unless your self-perception and the societal perception changes, the women empowerment is going to be a very, very slow and a long process. Because it hurts me to say it, by and large, we are a patriarchal society, and we have remained so for a very, very long time. And maybe I'm completely wrong, but I do not see it changing that fast. Or maybe I'm being idealistic wanting it to change so fast. But I don't see it changing as fast as it should be. Having said that, I'm not saying that gender equality is not there in the West. Here also, it's only, as I said, globally about 30% of the women that are in STEM or in any other global workforce, 50%, but in STEM about 29.1%. But there are more steps being taken in terms of reservation is one step, yes, where you're affirming. But again, reservation should not be at the cost of merit. Because you have to be politically correct, you have to have 30% women in the workforce. You cannot take out a boy and not give him a job because you already have given 70% job to men. A boy who's overqualified, who's qualified more than the women, you cannot give a job to that person, because that way the productivity will suffer. So you have to find that balance.
Sure. Thank you. The next question is about your work. Has the pandemic impacted the scope and nature of your work at all?
Oh, this is something I wanted to talk about. I did not actually. It's the women who actually have suffered most. I did not suffer as a woman. I suffered as a vet research worker, basically. Because we had, in France at least, we have had 2 lockdowns, and they were absolute lockdowns, where you had to sign in forms to go out of the house. You were allowed to go out of the house only for 1 hour, and you had to state what your purpose is. And if you can go to work only with a special permission from your employer. And it has to be in a workforce that is specifically for, which is called essential workforce. Okay. So Pasteur decided that people who are working directly on COVID are the essential workforce. So most of the time you had to work from home. And when it opened, people who were allowed were the people who were actively working on bench. So me being in a managerial position, on paper, I'm not a bench worker. But in reality, I work on bench for at least 10 hours a day. So my own experiments suffered. In the end, a couple of people in the lab who were still working, it was not as fast for production of data. So you can work from home at a certain point of time, but then the production of data stops. So how long can you work on that? So most of my work was during pandemic was lots. Okay, I was compiling a lot of data and all that, but mostly it was meetings, and I had the Zoom fatigue. I mean, after a while, which most of us had. So, but then there are other people I know who were working in, my colleagues who were working in biostatistics, their work did not suffer, or bioinformatics, their work did not suffer at all. So personally, yeah, it did suffer a lot. But I know other people whose work suffered because they had to work at home, and they're in Britain, some of my friends, and they had to take care of their kids. Their husbands were working from home as well, but their partners were working from home, but they were not basically contributing as much as they would have if they were not working from home. Because they were at home, the girls were supposed to take care of their kids more than because the schools were closed. So their work suffered because of that. So that's another example of gender imbalance that we have. That even though both the husband and wife are working in science, they are working in the same lab, the same group. But the girl's work increased more at home because apart from the amount of work she was doing that was equivalent to her partner, she had to take care of the kids at the same time. So,
yeah, this is true about what we are also going through here. I think we have talked about it too often.
Absolutely.
Yeah, thank you. The next question is from Bhavya and Anupriya. They're asking, schools of biological determinism have believed that catabolic versus anabolic body functions in men versus women lend them different character traits, such as being passive and conservative for women and being passionate and energetic for men. Is there a better approach to behavior than this? How true is this? How should we be approaching it consciously and heuristically as young women? And is there also a biological basis to claim that women are generally not as proficient in STEM in particular? I think you have talked about it already, but yeah.
Exactly. This is my pet hate, actually. I have been talking about it. There's a perception that men and women, as you said, their brains work differently. I can assert the only scientific fact that we have, that excessive testosterone makes a person aggressive. It could be men with multiple Y copies that have excessive testosterone. It could be men with what is called as Leydig cell hyperplasia, where they have excessive testosterone. That increases aggression. And the reason for that is that there is a feed-forward loop between pituitary and the androgens. That is a simple reason for that. Okay. There are women with certain tumors called SLCTs who have excessive production of testosterone, and people with PCOS, or because of that, they have slight excessive, they have aggression because of this biological phenomenon. It's a very, very roundabout result, but a colleague of ours in Los Angeles, he has been working to prove that homosexuality has a genetic basis. And for that, he's been doing a lot of brain scans for both men and women. In the end, eventually, by scanning the brains and looking at exact their, what is it called, the scanning of the electromagnetic scanning and MRIs, all he could show was there is a more, this is established. I cannot quote the study, but for the women, I think it's the right side of the cerebral cortex which is more active, and for the men, it is the left side, or it could be inverse. I probably have got it wrong, but basically one of the sides is more active in men and then in the women. But that's more to do with your cognitive knowledge rather than your behavior. That is more to do with cognizance. It has not to do with your intelligence. It has not to do with your perception. It has not to do with your ability to understand STEM subjects. So in that, biologically, women are not at a disadvantage to pursue. There is no scientific evidence that women biologically are at a disadvantage to pursue STEM subjects. I gave you the example of Finland and other Scandinavian countries where, in fact, women are taking up more ICT jobs. Okay, you say that, okay, anything to do with computers, logics, men should be doing it better, but it's the women who are leading in these jobs. That's complete opposite of what these studies, the catabolic and anabolic studies, suggest. That women are doing the jobs which are more logical, women are doing the jobs which need more computational power of your brain. So that goes again that, oh yeah, the girls should be studying biology and the boys should be studying mathematics and physics. No, there is no scientific evidence for this. And the only statistical evidence I gave you of the Scandinavian countries, which is exactly opposite of what this catabolic and anabolic theory would suggest. The study that I quoted to you from my colleague about the brain scans and thing, there basically he has not found any difference between the analytical or the stimulatory brain waves from either the male. When we say male, we just divide by XX and XY. The XX and XY brains, as simple as that.
I think in this, when you are talking about a testosterone level being more in some women due to PCOS or whatever, I think in sports, they get discriminated more. Someone was disqualified from Olympics and Michael Phelps was considered
I was part of the committee for Caster Semenya. That is a completely different story. The reason for that is there is a condition it's called DSTs. That's the pathology I work on. It's called disorders of sex determination or development. So there are conditions that are called PAIS, which is AIS, which is androgen insensitivity syndromes. Okay, in that case, what happens is that your testes are formed, your XY, your testes are formed, but you have mutations in androgen receptors. So you're not able to metabolize androgens. Okay, so you have an internal testes, but because androgens are not being synthesized or metabolized, your external genitalia is that of a female. Now you can have it partial or complete, and if you have partial androgen insensitivity, then you have got partial metabolism of testosterone. So, or precursor of testosterone, which is DHT, which is a precursor molecule. So these conditions earlier were called as intersex conditions. It's a part of that. There is a whole range of conditions there. So in the sports, when most of the girls, so there is a bar when you look at the level of testosterone, normal level of testosterone in girls that goes from 5 picomole to up to 15. It's such a wide range. And if you look at a pre-pubertal boy, their testosterone is, I think, less than 14. So there is a high range which is considered normal. If you have androgen insensitivity disorder, depending on where you are, you can fall within that range. And if you go beyond that range, then you have to go back and get your karyotype done and see whether you have got PIS or CIS or any other DST conditions. So in case of the Olympic athletes that you're talking about, Caster Semenya or Duti Chand from India, these girls have got DST conditions. So if you simply talk in very basic biology, XX is a male, a female, XY is a male. These are XY females. But at the level of their hormone, they are females because their male internal gonads, they don't work. But they don't have female gonads either. So they don't have female estrogens or progesterone, female hormones. They have DHT precursors, DHT, which are the testosterone precursors. Part of it could be metabolized, so they have some level of testosterone in their body, which gives them unfair advantage in terms of their muscle strength, because that is a biological fact. And mentally, women and men are the same, but physically they're different because of their hormonal profiles. Okay, and testosterone gives you an advantage for your muscle development and muscle function. So these girls, they did not have an unfair advantage because they had an unfair advantage because they are XY and they had some mechanism by which they can process partially process androgens. So the new rules of IOC, they are actually go by karyotype, and if you have got hormone levels above a certain threshold, then you are supposed to take suppressants to break that down. So before competition, your hormone levels should not go beyond a certain threshold. So that was a medical condition that actually gave them unfair advantage.
It's great to know the scientific explanation because we get to know from media, and media glosses it as like while the males are considering it as advantage, and for girls it's like undue advantage, right? So that kind of a thing.
It would be an undue advantage, yes, but it's a medical condition behind it. It's not that they took testosterone to be more muscular.
Yeah, true. I think we already are at the end of the time that you have promised us, but I would like to end, like, I would like to ask the last question. It's asked by Dr. Lena Vij. She was saying that how mentors are very important especially
What did you say? Who are
mentors.
important? Mentors.
You were talking about mentors, yeah. So
Oh,
she was
okay.
asking, you have been lucky to get that kind of a mentor, but what if we are the unlucky ones? What do you suggest for that?
I was the unlucky one during my thesis, and it was not a woman. My mentor was not a woman. Whereas one of my colleagues was very unlucky during her thesis with the women mentors. She
had a
raised her-
hard- I
she had a very hard time.
can't be
So,
more tougher.
pardon?
I said can't be more tougher than that. What you went through during your thesis time can't be more tougher.
Yeah, but it was not because her mentor was a woman, Anita. I got it because,
True. It was a man.
well, anyway, there's no right or wrong question to it. If you have the guts, and to be honest, at that time, I had the guts to call out, but much later than I should have. If you think that you can challenge them on the right thing, if you can prove, you challenge them. If your mentor, they're really doing, so there are two things about mentorship. One is the perceived injustice done to you. Okay, I have been on that side of the coin as well, where one of the students thought that she perceived that injustice was being done to her, and we had to sit her out and discuss it out with her that, what's going on and what's your problem. Sometimes there could be a misunderstanding by which you might think that you are on the receiving side of things from your mentor, which is not, which you don't deserve. And on the other hand, I know people who have suffered a lot because their mentor really was not a good mentor. So confrontation, again, 20 years ago, I would have given you a completely different advice. I would have just said, like, go, swarming into the room and confront them. No, that's not the right approach. That really causes a lot of bad blood, and that doesn't solve anything. The first thing would be, now that I've seen it from both sides, from going from being mentored to be a mentor now, my personal opinion, it may not be a universal opinion, but my personal opinion is, again, discussion. If you think and you have proof that what is being done to you is wrong, and you're not getting adequate mentorship, you should go and speak to your supervisor and say that I came with these expectations and I'm not getting this. Give them a chance to explain their side. And if they cannot give you a satisfactory explanation, you again have the right to demand them that why is it. There is not an exact solution to it, but if discussion doesn't solve it and you think that this is going to harm your career in the long term, probably it would be better to change mentors. But most of the people I have known, like, as I said, especially the girls who are my age and who have gone through similar process as me, we ended up learning from both bad and good sides. And so my postdoc, I gave her every opportunity, my last postdoc, that was given to me. Now it's up to her how she basically utilizes it and how she takes advantage of that. So my personal opinion is, don't be confrontational, but definitely discuss and say it very, very clearly that how it is negatively affecting you, how it is negatively affecting your career. You're not getting the mentorship that you expected. And then if you think it is definitely going to harm your career and you are orientated that way, then you would have to find a different mentor and you have to discuss if it cannot be resolved. if it cannot be resolved. I don't see any other way out of it. Maybe some of you might have a different way, which is better. I mean, you can tell me, because everyone has their like own experiences and have their own ways. So that would be my opinion, and that would be my way, and that's how it go.
Thank you. I think all the other questions which are still coming in, I think they will be forwarded to you. Now I'm Bhavya and Devanshi to carry forward the program. Thank you. It was
Thank
really
you.
great listening to you.
Thank you. Can I just take a minute and just text my colleague, just to tell her that I'd be like about 15 minutes. Sorry. Okay, done.
Thank you so much, ma'am. It was such a wonderful talk, and your words were encouraging. We also got to know about so many new things and the premises we used to hear, but we did not know they had a medical condition and they had a medical reasoning behind those things. So now I would like to proceed, and I would like to request Dr. Kusum Lata ma'am and Dr. Vairina ma'am to present a token of appreciation and gratitude to our plenary speaker, Dr. Anu Vashambu ma'am.
I hope when the times will be better, I hope we can present to you more than
No, thank you. That's very kind. It's appreciated.
Yeah. But it was really great listening to you. Thank you.
Now I will request Rashmi ma'am to present the token of appreciation and gratitude to our principal, Dr. Savita Roy ma'am. Thank you, Rashmi ma'am. Thank you so much, everybody. I would now like to call upon Dr. Anita Garg Mangla, Convener, Women's Development Cell, to kindly deliver the vote of thanks.
Thank you, Devanshi. On behalf of Women's Development Cell, DRC, I, Dr. Anita Garg Mangla, Convener, extend my heartfelt gratitude to the plenary speaker of the day, Dr. Anu Vashambu, for accepting our invite to be the esteemed speaker for this international webinar series day 1 and apprising us with a very insightful and thought-provoking session. Also, I would take this opportunity to thank Professor Daman Saluja for critical sharing of her views about the session, and Dr. Vijay Lakshmi K. Gupta for sparing her valuable time to grace the occasion with her kind presence. I will fall short in words to thank our respected principal ma'am for her motivation, unrelenting support, and guidance from the inception of the thought to culmination of this first day event. Ma'am, it's you who inspired us to do more and reach new heights. Thank you for being there. And special thanks to Vice Principal ma'am, all the guests, senior faculty, ex-convener WDCs, and students for their presence and making today's webinar a great success. I look forward to meeting all of you with the same enthusiasm for the next 2 days. And informal thanks to Dr. Anu Vashambu. Just for everybody, she was my senior in National Institute of Immunology and the main person behind pulling my thesis through. I still remember 2 days before submission, I told her, nahi hoga. This was 28 June 2003. And she told me, from Edinburgh, you submit. I'm coming by flight. I'll ensure you submit on 30th June. And I submitted at 11:59 a.m. and the time was till 12 noon. So thank you, Anu. I can't thank enough, and I don't have to thank you because you have pulled me for past 23 years, and I'm sure it's going to be there. Also, Dr. Anu was kind enough to visit biochemistry department when she was in India, and she gave a very insightful talk to our biochemistry student. So whenever you're coming to India next, we need you in college and address our students. Thank you so very much for being there. Thank you so much. It means a lot. I would request Principal ma'am to share a few words with us. Ma'am is there. Ma'am, please unmute yourself.
It was a very nice session. In fact, quite thought-provoking. Equally were very nice questions from the students, and I hope all of you must have gained a lot. And also what is done, what is said is, the bottom line is, you are not the inferior ones. We are the fairer sex. So best wishes for all your future endeavor, Dr. Anu. And
Thank you.
as Anita said, whenever you come to India, please be with us offline. So thank you. And
Thank
thank you, Anita, for conducting this particular session. And also Divyanshi, but for conducting the session. And Anita for guiding all the WBC members. And we hope the other session also will be equally enriching. So thank you.
Ma'am, I would like to add that all WDC faculty has been on tours along with students. It wouldn't have been possible without them. So you have
I'm sure.
been an extremely good team. Thank you for that.
I'm sure. Okay. See you. Bye-bye.
Thank you very
Thank you
much.
so much, ma'am. We would like to thank you all for gracing us with your presence. We will be meeting tomorrow at the same time, and any queries until then can be mailed to our official email address drcwdc@dr.du.ac.in. Our speaker for tomorrow's session is Dr. Santwana Kar, Life Science Strategy Director at a Californian startup and Cambridge Commonwealth Trust and British Evening Scholar. We all see you tomorrow. Thank you so much, everybody, for joining us today. Thank you, Dr. Anu. Thank you, ma'am. Thank you, all the faculty, our principal, our vice principal, our chief guest, our guest of honor, and my team, and all the participants. Thank you so much.
Thank you and congratulations and good luck for your next sessions. I'll leave
Thank you
now.
so much.
Thank you, ma'am.
All right. We close for today. Bye.